testimony you're about to provide will be the truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Under penalties of perjury, sir, you can get new charges today, just so you understand.
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. You may proceed.
Mr. Hayes, do you understand that? We didn't talk about that you could get new charges today?
Yes, I understand that.
Do you still want to speak, or do you not want to speak now?
I mean, I want to be truthful and clear the situation. I mean, if it may be in my best interest not to, but I mean, I have nothing to hide. I want to be honest and move on with the situation.
Okay. You were asked at community corrections, when was the last time you had used alcohol, correct?
Correct.
And what was your response?
My response, the original question was in the question, have you used in the last 12 months? My response was to my use prior to the judge stipulating that because of my bond, I couldn't use. So when the question was asked, how often do you use it? Once a week. When I had used before the judge stipulated because of my bond, I couldn't. I haven't used since the judge stipulated that I couldn't. So I don't know if there was a misunderstanding there, but that was my response, was to my usage within the 12 months.
So that was your understanding of the question? That
was my understanding of the question.
And when was the last time that you had used drugs?
Prior to, I'll be honestly, I'd probably say maybe mid to late September, sometime in that time frame.
Okay. And you did admit that to community corrections?
Yes.
All right. So when they wrote down in a highlighter a week ago on your paperwork, what did you take that to mean?
I didn't know she had wrote it. She wrote it down. I didn't know she had wrote it down there. I answered the question. I didn't know she had wrote it down there until you showed me yesterday when we saw the document that it was written on there.
Okay. When you didn't see her write it on there?
I mean, she was writing. I didn't know that's exactly what she wrote. She was writing on the document the whole time. She was asking me questions. She was writing. I didn't know this what she had wrote down.
You didn't know that's what she meant when she wrote it down?
If I hadn't known that she wrote that down, I would have corrected it.
Ms. White, he didn't know what she wrote, is what he testified.
Okay. Yeah, I would have corrected her. I didn't know that she had wrote that down. I didn't know what she was writing. Just taking notes. I didn't know that she had wrote that down.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No more questions.
I always continue to fail to understand why we're having hearings when people are going to get on and actually testify to actually violating the terms of their probation. Because that's what he just did. In September, he was on bond. I mean, in terms of their bond. In September, he was on bond. In October, he was on bond, but yet we're having a hearing. Ms. McDuffie, you may proceed.
I had court in October, on the 19th of October. I wasn't on bond for this case.
Sir, you've been on bond for this particular case, the case number 21 FB 1673, since 2021.
That's for the stolen property. This is both. This is not for the aggravated assault case that I got last November.
Just keep going. I'm not going to argue with anybody today. Ms. McDuffie.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
The day that you sat down and talked to Agent, I don't know if you sat down, but do you recall the day that you met with Agent Wild?
Yes.
Okay. When she started to fill this paperwork out with you, what do you remember her asking you, just first off, about any of your use of substances? Well,
first of all,
hold on. Let me finish asking the question. To the best that you can remember, what question did she actually ask you?
I filled the paperwork out myself. She didn't fill the paperwork, but the question came after I filled the paperwork out. The question that was referred to was, had you used in the past question that in the past 12 months? Yes, I had. When she asked how often you use, once a week. During that time I had used.
When you said
I didn't take it as, since the judge ordered me not to use, I didn't use. So I'm taking it had to be during the time when it's asking during the 12 months.
When you said that you filled out the paperwork, are you, I know Miss White has probably showed you these forms, correct? So
correct.
Okay. Are you talking about the first page where you fill in your name and your address and contact info and all that stuff?
No, I sat out in the lobby. I filled all the paperwork out in the lobby, and then when Ms. Wild called me back, she had the paperwork on her desk, and
Okay.
just was going over questions.
Mr. Hayes, one thing at a time, okay?
Okay,
So you filled that out by yourself, that first page.
correct.
Okay, now let's go to the second page that has, the individual drugs and stuff. Do you remember making those check boxes yourself by hand?
All myself.
Okay, so when you said that you filled out the paperwork, are you saying that you checked those boxes yourself? All those, boxes were filled in and then you handed them over to Agent Wild?
I handed them to the girl at the desk, and then Agent Wild called me back to her office, and I went down and sat
Okay.
down there.
So you had check marks filled in by yourself, and then she went over the form with you, correct?
Not the whole form, just I think that's the back page. The questions on there wasn't. She didn't go over the whole form, but yes, she did.
Okay. So now on that back page that we're talking about, I know that you already said you couldn't see what she was writing. You might not have been able to read it up close. But did you see her writing something on the form? Just generally, you saw her writing on it.
I saw her. Yeah, it looked like she was taking notes. As she asked me questions, it looked like she was taking notes.
So she was asking questions while she was writing on there, right?
Taking notes. I don't know that she was writing on the form. She asked me questions. I answered questions, and she was writing. I didn't know what she wrote down on the form. I couldn't see it. Paper
Okay.
she's facing this. But yes.
And Mr. Hay, now when you filled those check boxes out yourself, you saw it said in the last 12 months, right?
Yes.
So at that point, when you were filling it out on your own, when you checked off, for example, alcohol 1 to 3 times, you're saying that
within the last 12 months.
Okay. Now, when you met with Agent Wild and she asked you questions, what kind of questions did she ask you? I'm not saying what you thought it meant. What did she actually ask you?
Honestly, Ms. McDuffie, I don't know exactly the questions that they were just general questions. She had, like I said, that question sticks out because I remember she asking pertaining to say how often did you use? And I was like, and I took it as during the 12 months when I stated that I did use once a week. That's the way I understood it.
So you took that question to mean you were used on an average of 1 to 3 times a week during the past 12 months?
During the time that I was using the question, did I use them once or 12 months? The time that anytime during the time I use, yes.
Okay. Last question for you, Mr. Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember at any point ever telling Agent Wild that you used anything a week ago?
No. That's what I believe I misunderstood. When I stated once a week was pertaining to during my time of usage.
Actually, one more question for you, Mr. Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And you indicated, I think at an earlier hearing as well, but that you had sought some treatment while this case was pending, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you start that treatment?
The 27th of October to the 14th of November.
Okay. And it looks like you were arraigned on this is the case ending in 924. You arraigned on this September 14th of this year. So you started treatment roughly a month after you were arraigned on this case.
On this case?
Yes.
Well, we're here on 2 cases. That's all.
Okay. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just referring to the one ended in 924. The assault and battery from this year, from this fall. Well, the case is from last year. I mean, the case is from October.
Around November last year. That's when the assault and battery case was.
Yes, but I'm just saying, you decided to go to treatment in October.
Correct.
Of this
because
year.
because the testing place in Muskegon, the only problem was that they didn't have where to send the results, so they wouldn't. She said, "There's no reason for me to schedule you for testing, and I don't have no ready results."
Mr. Hayes, I'm not talking about testing. I'm asking about treatment.
Correct.
Okay.
October 27th to November 14th.
Okay, nothing further from the people.
Anything else, Ms. White?
You don't want any statements or follow-ups like that, do you?
I don't know what you're asking me right now. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I just want to say that I think it's obvious that Mr. Hayes is confused. And that's the
If you're
bottom
ready to
line.
make argument, we're not there yet. My question was, do you have any?
Oh,
Yeah,
no more questions, no.
okay. All right, Miss McDuffie, anything further from you?
Nothing further, no further witnesses, no further questions from the people.
All right. If you guys can make whatever arguments you want to make at this time, I'll start with you, Miss McDuffie, since it's your burden of proof, obviously.
Your Honor, I believe, again, obviously Agent Wild herself is not here, but we do have the communication directly from her, her explanation of what she was told directly by Mr. Hayes. Mr. Hayes testified that he did complete that form by hand himself, and even testified, I think, just a few minutes ago that his understanding was that he had been using those substances 1 to 3 times a week during the past 12 months. Now, I can't necessarily say that that would speak to within the time frame of arraignment on this particular case, but it's clear to me that Mr. Hayes, I agree with Ms. White that her client is confused. My concern is that that is due to his use of substances. But 100% have no doubt that he is not clear on what his use is because of the use itself. And I don't think that we've been presented with any reason to disbelieve Agent Wild's account of what exactly this interaction was. Even what was filled out by Mr. Hayes when the context of the past 12 months, I think indicates that he knew that he had been using. And he shared earlier, he decided to go to treatment while he was trying to figure out what was going on with testing. I can't imagine that somebody who hadn't used very recently at all would just arbitrarily decide to go enter into treatment in October after being arraigned on this case in September and these issues coming up. I've previously said Mr. Hayes has a substance abuse problem, and we want him to get help with that. I think this is an indicator of just how detached he is from the extent of that problem. So I believe we've met our burden, which is not beyond a reasonable doubt, obviously, in this type of hearing, that Mr. Hayes did indeed make those admissions that Agent Wild shared with the court.
Ms. White?
I believe that Mr. Hayes just showed how confused he was because he stated that he didn't understand what her notes were and why she wrote them down. He stated that when she asked him the question, he thought that she meant when he used, how often did he use in a week? He also said, during the last 12 months, this is what I wrote down. But then in the same breath, he said, when I used in 12 months, this is how often I use. So I don't even know if he understood during the last 12 months because he said 2 different statements if you were to follow him, which was hard to do because of his confusion. Then he also said, I haven't used since this order was entered. So I don't know if he understands the use or if he understands what's in front of him. Because last night talking to him, and even 2 weeks ago when he was in court, I had to write out exactly what to do. Go to community corrections, call this person. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. So I do believe he was confused by the questions at community corrections. He called me from community corrections to ask for an explanation of what they were saying. Unfortunately, I wasn't in there to hear what Agent Wild was saying. So all I could do was go off of what he was saying, which is very confusing. So I do believe there's confusion on Mr. Hayes' part as to what he was being asked. And I ask that the court take that into consideration.
So the court has listened to the testimony here today, and the bottom line is that even if the court accepts what he said regarding the 1 week ago, he's told the court today that he used in September. He's on bond for 2 separate cases. One of those bonds starts back to 2021, which is 21 FB 1673. The second one started in September. So even if he used in September, he was still in violation of his bond. The second piece of that is, I don't believe that to be true anyways. There is no reason why Ms. Wild would write down that he used mid to late October if she wasn't told that. She didn't make that up out of the blue, and it is more consistent with the fact that he actually went to get into treatment in October. So either way, it is a violation of the bond. With respect to the confusion as to 1 week ago versus 3 times per week for the past year, I don't accept that as true either. When people are not telling the truth, they oftentimes get tripped up in what they're saying, trying to cover for what they're saying. The bottom line is, I agree with the prosecution that he has a huge problem here with respect to the use. That is the reason why we haven't gotten him to test in months. He has not tested in months, although he's been ordered to test. And the benefit that I gave him was that he kept coming to court, although he hadn't been testing. And I was giving him that benefit. When I told him to go and test on the last day, which was December 7th, when this intake was done, he then went over to community corrections and indicated he didn't have the money to test. He was supposed to be testing for months on end. So the fact of the matter is that he made no preparation for testing, even though he knew that he was supposed to be testing, which to me is a concern about where he really was with respect to what the test results were going to show. Having said all that, the real issue is that he's so out of touch with that issue that we're here having a hearing for something that he then admits to doing in the midst of the hearing, which is a waste of the court's time, every attorney's time here that is standing before this court. And it just shows that he has no real insight to his issue. And he shouldn't be back on the streets just yet until he figures that out. He is found in violation of his probation. I'll see him back here on January 8th when it's time for him to be sentenced. I'll consider a release to a serious long-term inpatient treatment program in the interim time period.
Your Honor, because it's also a bond violation on that more recent case, I don't know where we stand. Obviously I want Mr. Hayes to get treatment, but I just didn't know where we were positioned for the pretrial on it.
We have that adjourned to January 8th also. It's hard to talk to Mr. Hayes about several issues at once.
January 8th, 2024 at 9 a.m. on both matters.
Thank you.